Coming up on this episode of Together for Good, I'm interviewing Sylvia Boedeker. She's been a member here at Bethany a long time, has a really interesting childhood growing up in small town Iowa. Excited to hear from her about why she has chosen to stay involved in church. Here we go. Welcome to the Together for Good podcast, a podcast created by Bethany Lutheran Church in Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, and hosted by me, Pastor Nate Preisinger. On Together for Good, our goal is to provide practical, engaging content that supports you without expectations. Whether you're feeling disconnected from traditional religion or simply exploring what faith means in your life, we're here to walk alongside you. No matter where you are on your journey of faith, we're glad you're here. Welcome to Together for Good. Okay, hey, Sylvia, welcome to the podcast studio.
Thank you.
You were saying as we walked down, you're like, I haven't been in many of these rooms in the catacombs of Bethany.
No.
I'm glad you can be here today. Thanks for agreeing to this. Sylvia attends our Tuesday morning Bible study almost every week, I would say. And you're one of the most insightful people there. This is why I asked you to come on. I didn't tell you that ahead of time, but I just love your reflections. You love being there and being engaged in the conversation around the scriptures. So I knew that you would just have all sorts of great things to say today. No pressure.
Okay.
But let's just start off. Help the listeners understand a little bit about who you are and where you came from. Before we hit record, you were talking to me about growing up in small town Iowa. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and what that was like.
Yeah, so it was rural Iowa, and my parents were immigrants, and so we had just come to the States. We were not yet citizens.
You were not born in the States?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I was born in Canada. My youngest brother is the only one who was born in the States.
Okay.
So when we came to West Branch, my dad rented a house, and we stayed there for the whole time that I was growing up.
And how old were you when you moved?
3.
3 years old. But
Yeah.
do you remember it a little bit, the move, or no?
Anything in Canada?
Yeah.
Not one bit.
Not one bit. Okay.
Not one bit. I don't remember that at all. I only know the United States. So.
And your parents were originally born in Germany. They're
Yes.
both from Germany.
Right.
And so what was their kind of path from Germany to Canada to U.S.?
Well, that was interesting. My dad left Germany. Actually, my mom worked for my dad's father because he ran a children's health home.
Oh, okay.
He was a doctor, and she was a kindergartnerin.
Sehr gut.
Yeah, which is someone who watches out for young kids.
Got it.
So she was taught that was her area of expertise. And so she worked in those camps, and it was for the health of the kids. So
Yeah.
that was her work. And that my dad met her when he was there in Germany, because he did a lot of work in other countries. When he was in Germany, he needed a date. So someone mentioned my mom, and they hit it off, apparently. And they knew each other during that time. But then my dad left and went to Canada.
Uh-huh.
Americans weren't taking German Jews at that time.
Okay.
So he went to Canada and was supposed to have a sponsor there. No one showed up.
Yeah.
And he was probably homeless in Canada for a while, and he did lumberjacking and all kinds
Oh
of
my
other
gosh.
jobs. Yeah. And he went back to Germany, saw my mom again, asked her to marry him. He went back to Canada alone. And then my mom actually came over on her own to Canada, and they got married in Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what prompted the move to the States?
I think, if I remember correctly, we had a relative that lived in Indiana. So they
Okay.
actually went to Indiana first, and then decided to move on from there to Iowa. He had actually worked for him first. So that was the job that was waiting for him in the U.S. And after that, I actually don't know for sure how they came to West Branch, but he very quickly started working. He did lots of different jobs there, but he worked for the doctor in town.
Okay.
And he just owned a lot of property, so my dad worked for him.
So then your family, your childhood is born and raised really in Iowa, is what
very
you
much
remember.
so. That's the place I remember, yes.
And since this is sort of the nature of our conversation today, what role did faith, religious practice play in your family growing up there?
Well, I would say my mom was the churchgoer. My
Okay.
dad was not the churchgoer, although he went through our entire youth,
Wow.
because my mom, I think, wanted us to be raised in the church, and I think that's what he agreed to.
Sure.
I would say my dad's cathedral is nature.
Okay.
That's where he meets God, and that was really quite obvious for all of us.
Yeah.
So during the school year, we went to church, and during the summer, we went to my dad's cathedral.
What did that look like with your dad's
We would
cathedral?
go to the lake and just
Nice.
do things in the lake and the woods there. So that's kind of what our Sundays were like at that time.
What a beautiful balance between the two. I like the way you framed all that.
Yeah, because I think that played a role. My dad was very connected somehow to nature. He would wake us up in the middle of the night to watch a meteor shower.
Oh my gosh, cool.
Or if the Milky Way was really great, he'd wake us up and we'd all go out and see. Or
Yeah.
if he was mowing the yard, he'd find a wren's nest and it was like, okay, everybody come out here. We got to look at this. Look at this nest and how beautiful it is, so that was kind of his. Both
Yeah.
my parents were very nature oriented.
Just this reverence for the created world
Yeah.
and this curiosity about it, this excitement to share. I mean, that's really neat because I don't think that's a lot of what people necessarily experience growing up. It's just like, this is the way the world works. And yeah, taking the time. I like those stories of pausing, getting everyone to gather around to really look at what you uncovered. Not just tell the story later on of like, oh yeah, and I was mowing the lawn and I found this wren's nest.
Yeah.
No. It's like, everyone stop what you're doing. We need to come look at this and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
So how do you think that these, this origin story of yours, how does this form your faith as you reflect on it today?
Well, my parents, I think, for my faith, my mother was always a very joyous, faithful person. So she always saw the joy about following Jesus and what he taught and who he was for her life. And my dad's was a lot more complicated because he went to Catholic school.
Okay.
And I would say it was fairly corporal punishment like there.
Got it.
And very early on, he understood the incongruity of
Yeah, no kidding.
teaching love and then corporal punishment. So he was not fond of the church. He was not fond of religion. But interestingly enough, he frequently engaged with the pastors that were part of the Lutheran Church we went to in my hometown, which, by the way, was also called Bethany.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. So, and then it was kind of the way of the town that everybody went to church on Sunday. Now, of course, you realize that there are people that are not churchgoers, but it was a social place for people to meet and to meet their friends. It's a farming community. Everybody's working. It was a good place to socialize. It was and of course, people came to hear the word, but you did family things there. You had picnics. You did ice cream socials. You did.
It was the community hub.
Yes.
Yeah, the story I love to tell to that end too. The first congregation that I was pastor at was in Buffalo, New York, and it's this building right in the middle of the neighborhood. Clearly, like built. Did it all happen at the same time? It's hard to say exactly, but it is in the middle of this city neighborhood, and the building was finished in 1924. So like when things were very different on Sundays, blue laws in effect, and there's nothing else to do, and that church had a bowling alley in the basement.
Oh, wow.
Because it was the community center.
Yes.
Like you went to church on Sunday and you went to bowling leagues every night of the week at the church because it was just, the space where that happened.
Yes, it was community. And when I got old enough for Luther League, we were probably the largest group of teens meeting for a church kind of teen-based league. And so we would get people from other churches coming to our Luther League. And so, of course, that encompassed even more of our friends.
Meeting more people.
Yeah, and so Luther League was just a really positive place for us to meet. And it was just a different group of kids that we knew from school, but weren't necessarily in sports or music. And so it was just a great way to get with another group of people.
Absolutely. Now, so you grow up and did you end up, when did you leave home?
I left at 18.
Okay.
And back in and out during college years.
Gotcha.
But, I did a lot of traveling around. In summers, I worked at camps for physically impaired children and adults for about 4 summers. And, I would hang with the people there. And if we had weekends off, I bag a weekend with somebody's family and enjoy that and then get back to camp. So.
And so in this, progression away from home and away from, especially this small town picture that you're painting where it's, the faith community is such an integral part of daily life. As you leave that behind, did you find yourself not wanting to engage this anymore?
Oh, no.
This was always important.
Always looking for a church. And
why do you think that is?
because it's community. So because I like to travel a lot, that meant I was always getting into new groups of people. And it takes time to meet people and to get connected and to feel like you're part of that community. So for me, the church community was a way to maintain community while I was trying to figure out my way in the outside community.
Yeah, absolutely. And
there was probably only one time when I didn't go to church.
And when was that?
That was my first job. I was in West Virginia. And the Lutheran Church there did not seem to be a going matter. And I didn't feel like I fit in.
Gotcha.
And so I tried other churches, but that was probably the only 3 years that I have not gone to church because I couldn't find a place to fit in.
Well, I mean, that was what I was going to kind of ask you as a follow-up to the way you're describing this is like, I just needed that community. And frankly, like that's not always how church plays out. So it sounds like in West Virginia, you did not find what you needed from the faith community.
No, I got it elsewhere, but it was not coming from the faith community.
Where else did you find it?
In a stable, interestingly enough.
Was it Jesus? Jesus was in a stable too.
No, I could never afford to do the things I really wanted to do. And so I would try to find ways to get to them without having to pay the money to get to them.
Very wise.
So I actually worked in a stable in exchange for writing lessons.
Very cool.
And it was the nature piece.
Right, your dad's church.
Yeah, my dad's church. And it was a really great way. I mean, the horses were just intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So you took care of them. And that was after I finished my PT job there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that became your church for those 3 years.
For those 3 years, yeah.
And help us understand just a little bit more about what you mean when you say that. Because I think that's, we covered it a little bit of nature being this piece, but I'd love to hear you wax theological on it.
The other piece, of course, is my job, because I feel like my job was my vocation. It wasn't just a job.
Physical therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every day I got to meet people who I'd never met before. And you are kind of this neutral entity that they come to for help. And so they tell you their stories. And meanwhile, you're providing assistance to them with whatever issue that they're dealing with medically.
Yeah.
And so to me, I've always seen it as my vocation. So to me, that was also a place of encountering God. So I don't think church is the only place you can encounter him.
Yeah.
It's one of the places where as you're there over time, you get a lot more connected than you do to patients or that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I think during West Virginia that was sustaining, and then you make friends and you get to know how you're going to do things. But
so then where'd you go after West Virginia?
I was in California for a little while doing a course in physical therapy that was 6 months long.
Okay.
And then I went to Hawaii and lived for a couple years.
Oh, wow.
And
Whereabouts?
I belonged to a church in Hawaii that was Lutheran.
Yeah, which one?
It was the one that was right by the ocean.
Okay.
And it was Lutheran, and I'm trying to think what it was called.
What town is it? Was it Honolulu or?
It was Honolulu. It was the outskirts, Kailua.
Okay.
You're in the Kailua area.
Because I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if we've talked about this before. My grandfather started a Lutheran church in Honolulu.
Oh.
Yeah. That's where my dad grew up, in Honolulu, because they moved there before Hawaii became a state.
Oh, wow.
That's why Grandpa was starting. And it was Missouri Synod, because he was Missouri Synod at the time. I think it's Good Shepherd, Honolulu.
This was not a Missouri Synod church.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Funny.
But yeah, so I got involved with a church there whose go ahead.
No, keep finish that story, and then I have a follow-up real quick.
Okay, so I moved there and I looked for a church, and there was a Lutheran church on the ocean. So it's altar windows looked out on the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
And that's quite a challenge for a pastor because he's standing right in front of the ocean. But he was an interesting pastor. He did pantomime quite often in his services. So he was intriguing. It was also intriguing to me because there was a work requirement to be a part of the church. So you know, for 6 weeks, you committed to doing some of the work around the church.
No way.
Yeah.
Like a cooperative kind of, that's neat.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've
So
never
it
heard
was
of that.
just
Yeah.
a little unusual, and I was kind of intrigued by that and got involved in that as well.
But so when you ended up moving out there, right, especially given your experience in West Virginia, what I think is interesting, like for a lot of people, they have similar stories and they find that they have this spiritual connection through their work, through nature. And so they're like, you know what? Like I tried the church thing. I couldn't find one that worked. I'm done with it. But now you go, and it sounds like you at least tried looking again when you got to a new town.
Yeah.
That this felt like even though you didn't feel like something was lacking in West Virginia, you still then went searching out for some sort of church community when you relocated. Why? Any thoughts on what that was about?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think partly I was looking for people who operated on a faith basis. I mean, we can all
Yeah.
be very, very, very different. But when the underlying understanding is who Jesus is for your life, I think there's a different kind of discourse that goes on.
Yes.
Because it's based on something you know that generally the people in that place agree on, and then everything else is different.
Right.
So then it's interesting to meet people that live out their faith differently than you do, and understand things differently than you do. So for me, part of the church is to hear something more than what I understand about the Bible and about God, because I would say that I think in a more concrete manner. And I realize that people who understand underlying meetings and things deal in a more abstract manner.
Yeah.
And that intrigues me. It's not how I think, but it offers something that I cannot get on my own.
I like how you said that too, that finding people to talk to about faith is a different type of discourse. That was the way that you said it. And I think that's really wise, that you can have community elsewhere and you can have that connection. But if you know that you can talk about matters of faith, it has this cosmic dimension to it that I think is just different than what you might typically talk with people about when you're sharing life together in different settings, if faith is not a piece of that puzzle. It's funny too how it just seems like people really love those types of conversations. You always like the cliche of the college student who's just taken their first year philosophy class and their mind is blown and they're so excited to talk to their roommate about it. Like there's an element of that within all of this. I mean, and is that typically, you think, what you've found in faith communities, especially in adulthood, is the faith communities that have stuck have been places where you've been able to enter into that different type of discourse? Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that that's fair. And I even, for a while, well, I lived in Michigan for a while, and I attended an Assembly of God, interestingly.
Okay.
Which, for a German who is not particularly out there raising their hands for religion and everything, it was quite an experience.
Good for you.
But it was fascinating because the pastor literally talked for an hour. But that's where there was charisma in how he preached, and it was a verse by verse thing. So it was a very unique way of preaching. Being Lutheran and being raised Lutheran, you can hear some of the things that you might not be in agreement with, but it was just intriguing that he could hold the attention of people for that long.
Yeah, no kidding.
But that also teaches you a little bit about charismatic people. And I always think about the possibility that Jesus was very charismatic in how he approached people and gathered so many around him.
Yeah.
He was a good storyteller, and it was just an intriguing experience to be a part of.
And what would you say? I mean, the other, playing off your like quiet, like German demeanor that you're joking about, And in the same sense, if you didn't feel totally intimidated by the idea of evangelism, that's the assumption I'm making. I mean, what would you say to someone who says like, yeah, I don't see the point in going to church. Why do you do it? How would you approach a conversation like that?
Well, I guess I feel like Jesus has been involved in my life for quite a long time. And that doesn't mean I haven't been angry at God for
Sure.
many, many things.
That's still being involved.
Yeah, but still being involved. And I guess I adhere to the Lord, to whom shall we go? If there is not God, if there is not Jesus, what is there?
Yeah.
And if I were to tell somebody about, I think for me, the church is a safe place. I think this church has done a really good job of saying when we discourse about things that are
Controversial?
yes, thank you, controversial, then you want to know you're in a space where they talk about the rules of discussion and allow you to be safe in your space. And because these are people you know perhaps better than you might outside if you were engaging in this conversation. And so I've always found that to be true. I find that people who gather with other people who are faith-based, that they are being more careful about how they engage with others, a little bit more respectful, that this is a fellow person in faith. And so I think I would let people know it's a good place to talk about controversy, that the church everybody doesn't have to think about everything. And I think the biggest thing is people's biggest complaint is we're just a bunch of hypocrites. And I say, yep, we are.
Yeah.
But we have to have a place where we can figure things out.
Yeah.
And the idea that Christians think that they're not sinners or that they're not hypocrites is kind of absurd.
The idea that anyone would think they're not hypocrites
is absurd because are we not human? Do we not have dislikes and likes? Do we not agree and disagree?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I think that might be one of the first things. Well, we're just a group of misfits, and we're trying the best that we can to live faithfully. To live faithfully.
What does that phrase mean to you? I noticed
to have integrity, to care about people, to love people in a respectful, to be respectful, to be honest. I don't know if I've said that already, but and I think that's part of what my parents
I was just going to ask. Yeah.
They were all that and more.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are rules, but there aren't rules. I mean, at home, I was not raised with rules.
Wow.
We knew how to behave.
Uh-huh.
And perhaps we were taught before the age of 7 how to behave. And that's how you behave because you're around other people and other people matter. And I'm not always great at that, but I try.
Right.
So, yeah.
None of us are great at that.
Yeah.
But
So I think they were just one of my best examples of faithful people and doing right by people and caring.
yeah. Was your parents.
Yeah.
And not just for other people, but also, again, this great respect for the world that God has made.
Yeah. And to remember, I mean, our family was insular. We did not have relatives. So I did not know my grandparents. I did not know aunts and uncles. There was one aunt and uncle. That's the one that brought us to Indiana. But it was a very insular family. And it was an interesting time to be coming to the U.S. after World War for a German. And so I think there's a lot of things around how they were. And they were learning English, or they went to school for English very early on and learned what they had to do. Although I will say my mom was a babysitter, so she took care of kids my whole life.
Yeah.
And many of the early ones learned German. So they knew German words because that's how my mom interacted at that time. Yeah. So I watched my parents. That's who they were.
Yeah. Well, in an insular environment, like you're describing too.
We were raised German.
Yeah. And I'm guessing too, it's why you don't need rules there's expectations.
There are expectations, and we knew them.
And you really had to live within them because there wasn't a lot of the outside influence,
No,
exposing you to other
no.
expectations.
I think in the early years in school, I was, when you ask questions about how you live at home, etiquette, those table manners, all those kinds of things, I was always wrong because it was the German way. It wasn't the American way.
Wow.
And so I became aware really early that we were different, but not in the big sense of we don't fit in. We were different. Just different.
I think too, hearing a lot of what you're describing as well, that's such an compelling picture you're painting of, we were just different, and I knew that, and yet there was something, there was a sense of identity around it.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, that's the key to what you're talking about, is that
You're
it
a
wasn't.
Boedeker.
Yeah, and it wasn't something shameful.
No.
Right? We were just different, and I knew that, and because of that, you knew really clearly. Yeah, you had this really strong grounding in your identity.
Yeah.
And what's neat about what your identity is, right? This is where the other pieces play in, right? Your mother was a joyfully faithful person, you said. And a faithful person is someone who has integrity and care and respect and honesty. And it seems like you also saw that through your father, having him wake you up in the middle of the night to watch a meteor shower.
Yeah.
Having you all stop what you're doing to observe the wrens in the yard.
And he played with his kids.
And that also gives this great sensitivity, that's a piece of what it meant to be your family, was to have this respect and this sensitivity for the world around you, and this curiosity about it too. So I can see all of the ways, right? Just looking at that childhood that you're talking about, and this sense of identity of who you are being instilled probably a lot sooner than most people are able to. Right? I think a lot of other people don't necessarily have that. Their life isn't as insular as yours felt, and it didn't come with such clear, great instruction from your parents, sincerely. And so you really had a good understanding of who you are. All to say, you bring all that to this sense of what church provides for you. This is where I'm going with it. It's no, I want to be around a place that teaches respect and that teaches care. And I want to engage with people who have this sensitivity for understanding the things of the world like I do. I just see a lot of parallels there. How is that sitting with you as I say all that?
Well, I think that's true. And I think I cannot tell you where my interest in physical therapy came from. I was certainly involved in sports, but very early on, I became very interested in patients who live a life that deal with deficits. And how some of the deficits can be altered or changed, or how the world can be altered and changed to address some of those things. So, I worked in a community that was not considered normal, and
that was different, but that wasn't a bad thing.
And one of the camps I worked in, I would say I was in 5% minority. The majority of the people at the camp were Black. Probably one of my biggest introductions to another race. Because at the time that I lived in Iowa, the only time was college. College was the first time I met people who were different.
Wow.
And so it was a whole different experience. And then, of course, Hawaii is a whole different experience because there is no culture that is the major culture. So you get involved with a bunch of different cultures when you work in the medical field.
Absolutely.
And the idea that there are so many people doing things so very differently, and yet we're all so very much the same. And
that's neat to hear your reflection. Yeah, given everything that you experienced growing up, but then also these life experience. I mean, West Virginia is an interesting cultural place.
Oh, it is.
And Hawaii is an interesting cultural place for a lot of the reasons that you name. You've been in a variety of different places, but also grew up as, I think what we would say is a third culture kid, where you had one culture at home and one culture in school, and you're trying to figure out how to
mesh them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because we weren't even first generation Americans. And now, of course, everybody's very prolific, verbal about what it's like to be a first generation this or and how difficult it is. I didn't register it as a difficulty. It just was.
Yeah.
This is the way things are, and this is how we live our life. And
Huh.
so it wasn't something that was bad. It was, but I think my parents had a lot to do with that. They worked hard
Yeah.
to be a part of America.
Uh-huh.
My dad is, if you don't like America, vote or leave.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
Well, as this has been really fun going through all these different pieces of it. And I warned you ahead of time that I was going to ask this question at the very end. As you think about all this, piece it together, why are you still here? What keeps you engaged in a church community?
It's one of the few places I can breathe.
Say more about that. It just feels so overwhelming in the world these days. Yeah. And you need a place of peace, a place of security, a place to kind of connect you with.
To be connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life is hard.
And church can be the place where,
It's easier.
yeah, a sense of peace. Is there anything in particular that provides you that sense of peace?
The worship service. I'm very liturgical minded
Mm-hmm.
because it's how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
So my youth is a positive,
Mm-hmm.
and that just lends to it.
I'll jump in on the liturgy point. I often joke that the way to really appreciate Lutheran liturgy is you just have to do it for 30 years. And then it becomes a part of your being and your bones and your rhythm. And then there's great comfort in it. I mean, I feel a great sense of peace singing those familiar songs, praying those familiar prayers, going through the rhythm, because I'm also
The rhythm
connected.
of my youth.
Yeah, the rhythm of my youth. Yeah.
And I've always lived where I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And so it brings me to that.
Yeah. That sense of peace,
Yep.
a grounding, a remembering.
And a support. I mean, it's a real support. And Bible study is a real support because I get help understanding things that make things better.
Yeah. You're always the one on Tuesday morning to say, like, I so appreciate coming to this because it makes me listen on Sunday so much differently than I would have otherwise. And the ironic thing is that you're usually the person who makes all the really good points in Bible study anyways. But you're right.
I think I like the Bible study because it's hard to be a good teacher. And I think that over time I've had teachers here, pastors and parishioners who have a whole different understanding. Not that we understand differently, but they have a deeper understanding than I would get to on my own because that
Yeah.
is not my strength. Literature is not my strength.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing how people interpret, hearing how people read different kinds of literature, hearing how the scope of what you see as your faith life can just get bigger and bigger because of it is important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the teacher. That's the piece I notice is the one who's often teaching is that it's the process of studying these things in community and learning from the different experiences and the different lenses that people
Different
bring.
lenses people
Yeah.
bring. Yeah.
Yeah, because your childhood is very different than mine, and that results in you reading particular parts of scripture differently than I would. It just all hits us in different ways based on experiences that we've had. I think it's part of how the Holy Spirit is always continually working.
Yeah, and
through.
and how I think, your life is different than my life is different than my friend's life is different than the next life. And so I don't know why the world is so bent on trying to be one thing. And
Yeah, well said. Well said. So you're still here because church is a place that brings you peace, but that also gives you this sense of we don't all have to just be one thing.
I feel really strongly about that. How could I not with all the people I've worked with? I've worked with kings and I've worked with paupers.
Yeah.
And we are not that different,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, so the church is where we're supposed to gather. Why isn't that okay?
To learn from each other,
Yeah,
to be with one another when life
Yeah.
is hard.
yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Any final thoughts you want to add for our listeners, or things you want to summarize before we turn it off?
No, but I think I go to church because God is always a part of my life. And I think God is always a part of my everyday life because I go to church.
Yeah.
Like
Huh. Yeah,
God
well
is-
said.
Yeah, God is one of my first things when I'm like, I don't want to do this, or, if I'm swearing, or,
Yeah.
it's like, is this appropriate or does it matter in my life?
I love that too, of that. Well, and it's this perfect summary of what you learned from your parents, of your mom being the very faithful, typically, the dictionary definition of that. And your father having the more, I loved how you said it from the start, like that nature was his cathedral. And what I hear you saying is that, like, by having the experience of seeing God, like getting to know God in a church setting, it opens you up and tunes you to see God in the nature set, which then brings you back around to seeing God in the church setting.
Yep.
Because of that connection in nature. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I go hiking, I actually picture Jesus and I sitting at the top of the foothills, back to back, knees bent, and talking to each other.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how I feel about God in my life, is he's kind of back to back, and there are times when I walk away. I thought about that a lot, and I don't think he walks away from me. I've walked away from him. So it's back and forth.
It's back and forth.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvia. This has been phenomenal. I knew you wouldn't disappoint. You're such a thoughtful person and so articulate. Thanks for sharing your story and your emotions with us. I really appreciate that. And you, dear listener, thank you for listening. Please share this with family and friends. And as always, stay in peace. Thank you for listening to the Together for Good podcast. If you'd like more resources for your walk of faith, please visit our website, bethany-denver.org, or download our mobile app by searching Bethany Connect in your phone's app store.